This is a gap recap video for the week of January 29th through February 2nd. Hi everyone, it's Dow on the Dow. I'm going to go over the 13 stocks that I talked about previously to check to see if the gaps made it to the upside or to the downside. First up is NIO. We ended the week at $5.54. This week, 4 gaps opened up. This one right here is still in play. And that takes us to roughly $6.14. And this gap, it's a very small one, opened up and closed out at roughly $5.80. And this gap went up, so we anticipate a gap down, and it closed out right about there, and that took us down to 563. And then this gap, we gapped down, so I will anticipate a gap up whenever we fill, and that will take us into next week at roughly 569. It started out at 557, closes out at 569. And the original gap that I have been tracking for quite some time will take us to $7.16. We are not even close in that channel, in that zone, not even close for this one, but something to be aware of with NIO. Many other gaps that I've talked about as well, so those are still in play, but it's one gap at a time, 1 week at a time. The next one is SOFI. Again, I'm not going to go over price targets. I will do that in the next video, not this one. 788 is where we ended. And for the week, let's talk about all the gaps. This gap filled to the upside at roughly $8.46. This one gapped down, and so I will anticipate a gap up. That will take us into next week. Begins at 820, closes out at roughly 841. Right. And there was this tiny one right here. I did buy in this week as well at 758 and 759. But this gap right here filled to the upside, just a tiny one, a fast one at 767. Ignore that line and that line. Those are my buy and sell lines. And the other gap I will be tracking into next week, not in the time, not in the zone, not in the channel. Takes us up to 962. And there are other gaps that I've talked about in my previous videos that you might want to look at if you want to check those out, but that would take us to 1129 on that gap. The next one is TSLY. TSLY here. We had this gap open and close to the south side at roughly 894. This one to the downside also at about 894. This one took us down to 892. And then this gap to the upside at 898. The gap I have been tracking previously takes us to 974. We are not in the channel, not in the zone, but hopefully we could start kissing the 913 range next week if we start to go sideways and up. But right now the RSI is turning down. Looks like, yep. And you'll definitely want to check this out on the daily, the weekly, and the monthly time frame to see if it's worth jumping in for you. And then we've got this gap too that I have been tracking, and another one to the upside after that. Pfizer is the next one. I am in this trade for my mom. So this is the week I am tracking. This gap is still in play from the previous week and the week before that. This gap to the downside, fortunately closed out. It's no longer a threat to our accounts to the downside. This one still is. It's a landmine there to the south side. That closed out at 27.06, so that is no longer in play. We've got a teeny weeny gap there to the upside. But if we go up, that will get closed out eventually at 27.22. Now, look at this massive wick that we wicked up on earnings day right there. Took us all the way to roughly, what is that, 28.36. All right, standardized, the surprise, 163%. So reported 14.249 billion. The estimate was 14.369 billion, so we're down, but obviously up overall. You can't please Wall Street, right? You do well, but not as well as they want you to, and then they try to attack you. But in this case, we ran up, and then what goes up must come down, and it certainly did. This gap closed out at 23.88. So that is no longer in play. Oh, I guess I have some shares at this range too. So I will be dollar cost averaging some more in. I have some right here as well. But on the monthly time frame, for me, it is a buy for a long-term investment. I know people still don't like Pfizer right now, but that's when I like to buy, when people don't like it. When there's blood in the water, that's when I like to buy. Now, to the upside, because you can bet Pfizer will protect itself and will not continue to go down without rebounding to some level. Not going to happen. It's too big of a company, too much at stake. And I've been hearing a lot of COVID shots for their commercials. COVID, the vaccine, which I can't believe. But they're still milking it, and they're making the vaccine, so that will probably help them. All right, that's going to take us up to $30.35. And am I tracking anything else? No. Those are previous targets. What is the price target now? We're up at 31.21. The next one, EXC, we ended the week at 34.35. This gap, we gapped down, so I anticipate a gap up, and that filled right there at roughly 35.21. This one will fill at roughly 34.97, so it's still in play for next week, as well as this gap and this little one here. Not in our channel yet, not in the zone, something to be aware of. Should we reverse and go to the upside? Right now, the channel is still going downward, as you can see. Oh, let me check something. 2, 3, yeah. All right. The next one is Altria Group. I was going to buy this, and I never did, and I regret it because I was tracking these gaps. This one closed to the upside at 40.72. No longer in play. To the upside. This one did open up for us to the downside, but I will not be tracking this necessarily in my gap and go trades. It's to the upside, but because this developed, just be aware of this gap to the downside that closes out at roughly 40.16. But the gap that I previously was talking about right here is still in play. We kissed it here, went sideways, climbed up, but didn't make it. But hopefully, fingers crossed, this week we will get to 42.40. And I think that's the last gap I've been tracking on this one. All right. The next one. SLB, Schlumberger here at $49 is where we ended. This gap to the downside that I have been tracking fortunately closed out, no longer a threat. I will delete that. Now the gap that I am tracking to the upside will take us to 53.03. That developed this week. See, we were up here and then we gapped down. So I will anticipate a gap up when we change course and go up. We're just going there slowly. You can see the trend there. It's slowly going up. That will take us to 53.03. But the larger gap, the original gap I was tracking, will take us to 56.39. We are a long ways off. Don't bank on it for a while. It's going to be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of pain to the downside, as well as some potential areas of profit. And this gap, fortunately, also closed out when we gapped there. Let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, so that's done. Yeah, we've got a couple gaps to keep track of here. The next one is OXY. All right, we ended at 57.04. We are at support, or nearly at support there. Note the bounce, excuse me, the sell-off here, and then the bounce here and here. But looking left, this gap is still in play to the downside. Oh, wait, nope, we touched. Right there. I'm going to give that a win for the shorts at 56.74. Oops. All right, and this gap, let me move this out of the way. Touch to the upside or right there. So we are done with this gap. And that gap has been in play, and I've been talking about it roughly since January 8th. So done and done. Right, notice all the gaps to the downside that also closed out. Yay, but note this gap right here, this tiny one. I'm not going to track that because I'm done tracking this one for my gap trades. But if you are continuing on with this one, there's a sliver of hope right here. That will take us back to 58.90 roughly. Okay, this gap closed out at roughly 58.90 as well, as I mentioned. And then on our way down, we gapped down. So it's going to be a while to get up here, but the potential is there. So that gap closed out. So I will be crossing OXY off my list. And I will find you another gap in my next video for my gap and go trades. But this will not be in it. BABA is the next one, 71.85. All right, let's talk about the downside potential since we'll continue that trend, right? Since all we've been doing, it seems, is going down with some pops here and there. This will take us to 68.64, but this gap closed up at roughly 72.73. This gap is still in play. Okay, we gapped down, so this is going to be gapping up. Let me change that to green. See how easily it can get confusing. That's why I color code everything. All right, that's going to go up to 72.37 whenever we turn around. This one gapped to the downside at roughly, closed out at roughly 72.20. This one is still in play for next week as well. It developed this week here, the week of the 29th. Takes a long time to go over these things for you. Okay, and the next one takes us to 76.55, and then the one after that, roughly 78.46. There you go. Been tracking that one for a while, but look at this hot mess it looks like, huh? But it's not a hot mess. It just looks like it. I know exactly every single gap to the upside and to the downside and the levels when I checked it. Just follow the charts. Look at that. Crazy. All right, the next one is MU. I do have this. We ended the week at 86.48. Nothing significant happened with gaps this week. Your typical gap up, your typical running up, running down, bouncing off support, selling off at resistance. All right. Oh, and out of the gate on Monday, this thing gapped. I'll move this out of the way so we can see. So this originally gapped down, so I tracked a gap up. And on Monday, we went here and then went up. So that gap filled right there. Let me move this back to Monday. So congratulations, right out of the gate. We ran up. But of course, we ran up to run back down again. That's how that works. Remove. That's done. So again, we gapped down. We filled up right here. So I will no longer be tracking Micron unless you are interested in me doing that for you. But I'm done with it because it finished the gap, which is what this video is about. And this is the recap. And the next one is SBUX. We ended the day on Friday at 92.99. Look at this massive run up, which means this gap closed out. And you really have to set limits unless you're watching it like a hawk, because it moves so fast sometimes that you will not make, when you're trying to sell, you might not hit what you want. So yes, if you hit the limit, set the limit, but it's too low, at least you got your price and got out before it tanked on you, before you realized it. So that closed out at 97.64. Yay, congratulations. This one's been whipping us around. Now, this gap, as you can see, we gapped up here. What goes up must come down. So that touched, and that is done within this week as well. You could just make some easy trades, scalps, day trades when you're looking for this stuff. Okay, this is still a threat to us, to the downside, a landmine here. Takes us to 85.18. I'm in this trade for my mom, but should we get down to this level and lower, I am getting back in again. Either for her to pick up more shares or for myself. I don't know why this is hanging out here. All right. This gap closed to the upside, 92.60. So this gap is done. Now, on this gap, this big box here is done as well. It took a while to finish out that gap. Look at this gap I've been tracking for a long time here. Started on November, finally closed out. I'll have to go through and clean up everything, and take a look at this on the daily so you can see what's still open. But that one closed out, so let me get rid of that. What else am I tracking for SBUX? I think that was the last one. That was the last gap up. Oh, wait a minute. Let me pull out to the 15-minute time frame. Oh, this is an old one. This was not a part of my gap and go trades, but look at this. I'm going to be done here with SBUX for this video, but this gap will take us to eventually 113.62. Not in the zone, not in the channel. We are months and months and months and months away from that. But if you follow the 1 year price target, that will take us to 109. And then I have it at 113.62. All right, so this will be off of my list. I will no longer be tracking this for my gap and go trades. And let's go to the next one, Nike. I'm in this trade for my mom. And that is at $100.71 where we ended. Let's take a look and see what happened this week. This one closed to the downside at $100.88, so we are done. This gap developed on Friday to the upside, yay. So this will carry into next week. Will take us out to 101.57. Okay, what else do I see? This gap is still in play that I've been tracking. That takes us to 105.03. And then this one at $106.47. The 1 year price target is 122.54. Yeah, this one has tanked. It went, you go woke, you go broke, and that's exactly what happened. But there's a turnaround story here. And Nike also laid off people, and when you lay off people, you make more money. So things are turning around for Nike. Lows, let's see. Let's check this one out. 219.49 is where we ended. This gap closed to the upside at 220. Look at 94. It ripped up and then started to come down a little bit because we are at resistance. This gap opened up, and as you can see, if you carry that out, closed to the downside right here on Thursday at 218.52, and this gap is still in play to the upside at 225.33. We almost made it back here a while ago when I was tracking this on December 22nd. We almost kissed it, but we didn't. That means it was still in play. So hopefully we will get there, and we should, according to the analysts. The price target is 229.89. Of course, we're on a downward channel now, but when we correct, that will close out and then go up even more. That does it for me. That is a look at the gaps that I was tracking for the week of the 22nd through the 26th. Was that right? The 26th? Oops. Oh, I will check this out here, and then I will work on a new list for you. January 22nd. I just want to verify that. Oh, no, I don't have. Oh, wait a minute. Why do I have it as the January 26th? That's February. That's wrong. That date is wrong. Ignore that date. That closed out that I was looking at on Friday, February the 2nd. Wait a minute. Will it let me do this? February, well, I'll say January 22nd through February 2nd. Is that right? Let me just verify. January 22nd, yep. To the 2nd. There we go. So that will again be carried through. Lows will be carried through for next week. And that is a look at the trades. Thank you so much for watching.